Hi everyone, it's Chris from Chasing 80s Toys, and when you look around in my toy room, I know it's hard to tell, but I'm a big fan of Masters of the Universe, and ever since I was a little kid back in the 80s, that first time I saw the Filmation cartoon, I saw Prince Adam when he held aloft his magic sword and said the words, "By the power of grayskull." I was sold. Now we've seen a lot of incarnations from the toy line ever since the 80s, but none of them really captured the same magic for me. That is, until Origins came out a few years ago. Well, during the course of today's video, we're going to compare these two toy versions of MOTU toys. One hand we have the vintage, on the other hand we take a look at the Origins toys. Helping me out is my good friend and fellow presenter of the channel, Scuba Pete. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Let's start where it all began. That is with the hero of this story.
Try swimming in mud.
This is He-Man, riding Battle Cat. He-Man was sold, like the other figures from the first wave in 1982, on card backs like you see here before you. And as a kid, I was blown away by this beautiful logo, the red and the blue. Then you have your action figure with a mini comic. This was something we never saw before. He-Man, as a lot of the other figures, came with a Power Punch spring-loaded action feature, which was pretty cool for knocking your bad guys over. And over the years, consider this as a 40-year-old figure, plastic looks and feels in great condition. In my collection there's only one flaw with these figures over the years, and that is there is a rubber connector connecting the legs together, holding them firmly in place. This still has the original one from back in the day, but over the last 5 years a few of them have snapped, and I needed to replace those, which is, for me at least, a time-consuming job, but it can be done. Masters of the Universe vintage figures started in 1982, and the last vintage figures came out in the year 1988. There were different versions of He-Man released, like the battle armor over here in 1984, and 84 was also the year we got our first Prince Adam figure. And later on there were several more versions of He-Man, from which the Power Punch He-Man is one of them that I really like. In the Origins line we also had by this time several versions of He-Man, and what I like to do is bring a few of those Origins figures in and start doing some comparison. One of the things worth mentioning is the card backs. Mattel released Origins in the same style of card back format as we got back in the 80s. The beautiful Masters of the Universe logo, same bubble, same red and blue going on, and opening up one of these, ripping up the bubble from the card back if you like, takes you back to those days when you were a kid in the 80s, when you unwrapped those action figures back in those days. Very important part of the toy line was of course the mini comic. Every figure had a mini comic with it, and that gave you some sort of background story, because remember in 82 when we got our first figures with mini comics, there wasn't a cartoon on TV yet, so at least we had some form of background story to relate with. In my country, in the Netherlands, in Europe, we got multilingual mini comics. This one is in English, German, and on the other side we find French and I believe Spanish too. And that was how we got them in my country. There never were mini comics released in Dutch to my knowledge, but still the mini comic was pretty awesome. I could understand the pictures, and at a young age quickly learned a few words of German or English through Saturday morning cartoon TV, of course, so I could follow what's going on in these mini comics. And happy to say that Origins kept or brought back the mini comic. In Europe, in the Netherlands, where I got my figures, there's no text in it. But I believe the ones released in the US do have it, so that's a bit of a loss for us. But overall we get some pretty cool, impressive artwork and a fun little bonus to go with the figure and a nice nod to the vintage. And here we have Masters of the Universe Origins He-Man. I bought this figure in 2020 when it came out, next to the vintage He-Man. They're the same size, both train in the same gym as you can see. They have a shield, the axe is there, the power sword is there, kept true with the color scheme, but there is one big difference between the two of them, and that is of course the head sculpt. Mattel gave us a He-Man which had a total makeover of the face. This new fresh look wasn't to everybody's taste, and a lot of the fans preferred the vintage head sculpt. Happy to say Mattel listened to us fans, and not much later we got the He-Man figure with the vintage head sculpt. But even before we got the re-released He-Man figure with now the vintage head sculpt, and they did the same for Skeletor, we had Battle Armor He-Man. And he came with two faces on a deluxe card back. One face was this one, the other one was the vintage head. Let's bring out my vintage Battle Armor He-Man to show you the difference between the two figures. Armor is a little less shiny here. The damage bit in the middle is a bit smaller with this He-Man, but it does have the same party trick. The moment you hit, you get one scar, you get another hit, you get two scars. One scar, hit him again, two scars. Another big bonus with the Origins figures, which I think is an improvement, is the articulation. You could never do a power pose with your vintage He-Man figures due to the 5 points of articulations, but these newer Origins ones have articulations still with the arms, but not only upwards and downwards, they can also move sidewards. The elbow has articulation, there's articulation at the wrist. The legs have articulation at the knees now, and some articulation with the ankle, and the feet can turn 360 degrees as well. Head can now move up and down instead of only left and right. So major upgrades there. As a kid, to be honest, did I miss that we had far less articulation back in the day? No, these figures were perfect. They did the job excellently for me back in the day. I didn't miss it. Am I happy that we got more articulation now? Yes, I am. Here we have Skeletor to the left. This is the half-booth Skeletor, the early 80s released Skeletor version. Only half of the booths are painted. Later on they painted the complete boots of Skeletor. Here is the Origins one. Smiling Skeletor, he has that look on his face like he's going. And over to the right we have Origins, Triclops and vintage Triclops, and you can immediately see such a difference with posing. Skeletor, the same story as with He-Man, we got a makeover on the head. I kind of like this look. From certain angles this looks really good, but like with He-Man, he got re-released later on with the vintage head on it, and there's also the Battle Armor Skeletor that came with two heads, so you can go to the vintage look if that's what you preferred. Thing worth mentioning is with the vintage we don't have the action punch action feature. What we have with almost all of the Origins figures is that the head can be removed, the torso can be removed, the arms can be removed, you can take off the feet, and this feature brings a whole new game into play, and that is that you can mix and match your figures any way you want it. You can create the most crazy out there looking figures with this, so that's pretty cool. Now before we're gonna move over to my good buddy Scuba Pete, I wanted to show you these two. Orko Man-at-Arms. Favorites of mine from the Filmation cartoon, and as a kid I always thought it was a bit odd that we didn't get the mustache with Man-at-Arms. With the Origins We do, though he looks a bit like Burt Reynolds or Magnum PI. At least he still has the moustache. A figure that really nailed it is Orko for me. Orko in the 80s came with a box of tricks, and he came with this little play feature. Now Orko back in the days was a cool, fun little figure to have with your collection, but the moment that Origins Orko was released made this an instant favorite. This Orko looks like he just flew straight out of the Filmation cartoon.
Orko the Great will entertain you all with a dazzling display of amazing magic.
And with that said, it's time to go over to my good friend Scuba Pete, who's gonna talk about some more differences between the vintage and the Origins toy line.
Hey everybody, Scuba here, and we're taking a look at the 1981 and 2021 Castle Grayskull. I had not set these two together like this before, and I'm totally digging it. Let's take a little flyby look, shall we? On to that iconic 81 awesomeness. I love that just skeleton yawning mouth. Very cool also that, you know, you got lots of different paint apps on the originals depending on, you know, how the guy at the factory was spraying that day. And then in 2021, 40 years later, we get the Origins. And I am in love with this box. That art is fantastic. I'm not shelling out big bucks for an original box, but this one does oh so well. And Grayskull is a great homage to the original. I wish it had a little bit more darker paint apps to it, but I still love it. It's slightly larger, and it comes with the Sorceress. Oh yeah. Skeletor can't wait to try and get inside. Speaking of, let's check it out. All right, let's jump in. So in 2021, the Origins, lower level. Of course, you got the same entrance through the jaws that you can open with a sword, like in the classic original version. You got the cool dungeon stick in the back. With the Origins, you also have two ways to store your weapons. Skeletor can't believe it. Check out that training device. I love that it's a fist that can clunk you on the back when that swings around. Look out! And of course you have the elevator to the second deck, which we'll check out here in a little bit. And right next door is our 1981 treasure. OG front door again. Open that with a sword. That great sticker in the back. One weapons rack. And the dueling device. Of course, the other weapons rack is a cardboard cutout for the elevator. Oh yeah. You can kind of hook it to keep it up there. Got your cardboard computer screen. That was a tricky find. And even more so was the cardboard cutout of the robot. And of course, we all know the trap door. Ah! There's old He-Man on the throne. The banner, thanks to Zach Paris for that baby. I'd never be able to find an original. And then up top, we've got the ramparts with the laser and the old school flag. But let's check out next door, our new neighbor. Here's the Origins level 2. Again, same nod to the gargoyle for the pull. This time, a lovely plastic plug-in computer screen with the great graphic sticker on it. I love it. It's also got a little drop-down banner, purple banner in the back. Much larger steps that actually go to an upper rampart, which is a great feature. Now I'm kind of cheating because the stock Origins Castle does not come with the robot. It should have, but this was in the Secrets of Grayskull pack. Of course, Skeletor. Things have gone very wrong with him. Sorceress is not having any of it. And there's that other classic banner. It's fabric and it does drop down on a little swivel. And then up to the ramparts, we've got the laser and a nod to that original flag. Well, I hope you enjoyed those comparisons. But before we leave this classic beast, let's check out those rear ends, shall we? There's 1981. And then the Origins.
Keep fun boxing in the free world. Alright, Singing Landshark, that is enough out of you. Let's go, Bobsquad.
Up next, we're looking at the Landshark. I love that I've got the box for the Origins one. I mean, that artwork is killer. And as a tease, Snake Mountain, I've got it original, but I would love an Origins version. Yes, please. And with something actually on the inside of Snake Mountain. Oh yeah. So let's take a look at them. We've got the new Origins version. What? Tez? This new one is actually slightly larger than the old. As toy expert Lucy pointed out not too long ago on the Shabby channel, look at those shark mouths for the lasers. That's why she's a toy expert. Gotta love that. Now the mouth actually is articulated when you roll it, which is a great feature. Skeletor's enjoying it. Next door is the original. Now, poor Trapjaw. He is stuck in the jaws, but you had to press a lever way in there in the cockpit to get it to do that. To take a bite. A little smaller, but still oh so enjoyable. Hey, Skeletor. And who's checking us out? What? Who's that? Prince Chuck Norris? Finally, let's take a look at one of the most iconic animals of the line, and that's Cringer. Up first in the Battlefield Warriors 2-pack that I managed to find is the battle-damaged Cringer. He is highly articulated, as you would come to expect, which allows him for some very dynamic posing. Oh, look at those little pads. He's so cute and ferocious.
What happened to Cringer?
Next door, there's no denying that classic Cringer, borrowed from the Big Jim line oh so long ago and painted a weird, wacky color scheme. You gotta love him. This was my favorite companion for my He-Man. The 2-pack came with a very cool battle armor He-Man. But look how great he looks sitting astride a original Cringer.
I'm not really up for an appearance today, Adam.
And there's my OG battle armor He-Man with the Origins Battle Cat. Very seamless. That's what I love about this line. You can just plug and play from both.
As you can see in my MOTU collection, the vintage collection had a lot of figures, play sets, beasts, machines, vehicles, And Origins is well on its way with bringing out a lot of playsets. Well, we had one playset so far, the castle, but we already got a lot of vehicles, beasts, and the figures that they're bringing out are amazing. Figures like Ninjor, Scareglow, but also fan favorites from the start: Stratos, Man-at-Arms, Faker, Beastman, Triclops. Even figures that cost a fortune if you want to buy them vintage now are available for a good price in the Origins toy line, like the Sorceress.
It's the sorceress, you boob! I've had it with your whining and bumbling.
Now it's time to come to that conclusion. Which is best?
You know, I'm not gonna lie. I started off with that predisposed position in my mind of original. It has to be original. There's no other. But that's like 10-year-old Pete inside me saying that. But as a much more seasoned person now and older, I tell you, Origins is just rocking it. It's my favorite. I mean, I've got copious amounts of the vintage, but every time they release a new Origins figure on card as a reveal, or what's coming down the pike, or a new, 2-pack or a playset, I get so excited. I mean, I'm back to that 10-year-old Pete. I'm bonkers for it. I love Origins. It is phenomenal.
It is a line that keeps on giving. For instance, you got that beautiful Castle Grayskull over there, the Origins Castle Grayskull on your side, and like you shown us in the video bit we did earlier, it came with a figure with, the Sorceress of Eternia. This one, I see you don't have it on there on the castle yet. Let me send you this one so you can put it on top of it, right?
Oh, thanks.
Here it goes.
By the power of Grayskull. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, you're welcome. Like I said in the video, we got figures that, the Sorceress, for instance, try to find one of these in good state, vintage. You're gonna pay hefty for that one. Try to get the Origins one. You have a figure that looks like her, that is the same size, she fits in the line. It is an original Mattel one. It's not something else, it's Mattel with Mattel. And how can you not like that? That's perfect.
Right. I mean, I'm grabbing Scareglow. When I was setting up for this, I'm like, oh, he's coming. Because there's no way I'm paying $500-600 for a vintage one when he's spectacular. And I own two, because why not? At $15-16, you can't not get a couple. And he still glows, and he's got his scabbard, so you don't have to track that down, because so often the vintage ones I see, it's just the figure. He doesn't have his cape. He doesn't have his scabbard. You're going to pay even more to find those items. And there he is, 100% complete for, $16 US.
One of the figures like Lords of Power Merman. Our friend Bob Hansen made a funny video about that.
The reason it says LOP there is because lop is actually the name that a merman makes when he swims around. He goes lop, 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 lop. And then there's some bubbles. And then it goes lop, 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 lop. And that's what that stands for.
It's a great figure. So cool seeing these figures we never got before. We got the Green or Eternia Goddess. We got Lords of Power Stratos. We got Lords of Power Beastman. All those early figures that were in the earliest mini comics. We have them now in the same scale as the vintage. And not all figures, to be honest, from the Origins I liked as much as the vintage. There were figures that I think the vintage one were better. This guy is an example for me. The head sculpt, there's something for me
just a little off.
Yeah, that's off. That's maybe it's nostalgia for the vintage, but this head sculpt really is my favorite. So it's not all pluses for the Origins line. Vintage was a heck of a line. It was great, so it's hard to top that. And I wouldn't say there's one clear winner. I think they both enhance one another, finally completing the journey. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, they really do display so well together. I mean, it's seamless. Yeah, I have no trouble mixing them up and having my vintage with Origins. On a completely side tangent, I mean, I'm excited for what's yet to come. I'm looking at you, Rota, and, or Snake Mountain, all kinds of other play sets and options like Eternia. I mean, I just got this Flying Fist Origins today and just got them out of the pack. But on the back, you've got Eternia over there on display. So it's like they're teasing us. Yeah, just bring it. More, please.
Yeah, I think that sums up the goal of this video. There's not one clear winner for us. We're big fans of the Masters of the Universe franchise, the toys, the cartoons, everything. And like I said, there have been many incarnations. For me personally, I love the Origins and the vintage. Those two, they do it for me, and they're both winners, enhancing one another. And there's so much more cools to come. We're just getting started, even though we're a few years in. So I think that's a good way to end this video, Pete.
I think so.
And that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and we will be back with more fun chasing 80s nostalgia. So see you on the next one.
By the power of Grayskull.